So then I got my black belt, and then I got arrested. And this is where I feel like jiu-jitsu lies to you. They act like, your team is your family and things like that. Like, I spent the night at George's house. I gave John Stutzman a puppy, a pit bull puppy. You know what I mean? Like, these were who I thought these guys were my friends. I thought they were my family. And then I got arrested. So you got to understand what happened when I got arrested. This is probably a video for another day, but since it's part of my jiu-jitsu journey, I'll just put it in there. So I was working at this bar, and this head bouncer there his name was Chris Hall. He's a piece of shit. He was racist as fuck, and I felt like I shared a couple funny memes where, like, Coconut Joes and Sluggers, it would be like a shit white tan, and, like, not it. And the darker it got, it would be like you weren't allowed in this bar. This bar had a dress code, a gay ass dress code. You couldn't sag your pants. You couldn't wear, like, which is crazy. Sluggers is a sports bar, but they didn't want you wearing like football jerseys and stuff like that, except on Sundays. So you could only wear, like, certain types of clothes. So I'm working at this bar, bouncing, and this Chris Hall guy was in the front. He was kind of overseeing the front. And these 3 or 4 black guys came in, and they paid the cover fee. It was like $3 each or something. And then as they were coming through, this guy Chris Hall says, you guys don't pass the dress code. And they're like, okay, yeah, no problem. You know what I mean? We'll leave. And they said, can we have our money back? And Chris said no. He said they couldn't have their money back. And now they're starting to get pissed off, and rightfully so. I was always the guy that called up because I was the toughest one in the bar, and the bouncers. So they would always call me for everything. So he called me up and be like, hey, these guys got to go. And I'm listening to see what's going on. And they're like, well, we want our money back. So then I figure out what's going on, and I'm like, well, why aren't you giving them their money back? And Chris is like, I'm just not giving it back to him. Like, he literally robbed them. He robbed them. So I said, hey, look, you guys, here's your money. I took out my own money out of my own wallet. I paid these guys their cover fee back, and I didn't kick them out like Chris wanted to, and that pissed him off. So me and this Chris dude had a problem. I'm going to try to sum this up. This is probably a video for another day, but basically, me and this Chris dude had a problem. He tried to send some people into the bar to beat me up. I ended up beating them up. Then he suspended me or fired me, and then I went and harassed him. And then he hired this cop's fucking son to bounce there. And I would go to these block parties that are outside the bar, and I'd talk shit to Chris. Well, I think he asked this cop's son if she could fuck with me. So she fucked with me. She called me up. And she actually followed me a little bit. She would see me walking my dogs and pull up and ask me about my dogs, acting friendly. And I would show her my dogs, talk to her about my dogs. But really, she was being shady. And I saw her a few times. I thought it was weird. So I thought she must have been watching me or something. And it turns out she's good friends with my neighbor, who was always calling the cops on me for my dogs too. And so anyway, she ends up calling me, threatening to charge me with harassment or something if I don't leave this Chris guy alone. And so she's telling me she's going to charge me with harassment and this, that, and the other thing. So then I tried to defend myself. I was like, look, I didn't go in the bar, blah, blah, blah. And she interrupts me. I said, don't you fucking interrupt me. And then she hung up on me. And I'm like, wait a minute. A cop is calling me, talking shit about charging me with shit, and then I defend myself. She hangs up on me. I got a feeling she wasn't supposed to hang up on me. So I called back and I asked to speak to the OIC. The OIC is officer in charge. That's what they call the cops here that are kind of like the boss of the shift. So I talked to the OIC and I said, hey, look, this bitch Cheryl Fry called me and telling me she's threatening this, threatening that, and then she hangs up on me. I told him I swore at her and she hung up on me. And he's like, well, she wasn't even supposed to call you because I'm supposed to know about all that stuff before she does that. I was like, oh, really? I said, I had a feeling she wasn't supposed to call me. I said, well, I want the incident number for the person that complained. He's like, oh, it's going to take me a while to get for that. And I said, I want to file a complaint. He told me to come down, file a complaint. I'm going to try to just speed through this story. So I go down there, I filed a complaint with her, and then I come back home, and then literally an hour or 2 hours at the most after I get home, some fucking craziness is going on in my backyard. I hear my dogs barking and going nuts out back. I run out my back door. I see Cheryl Fry's good friend videotaping something in my backyard. I look, one of my grown dogs is beating up one of my puppies, and a bunch of my dogs are running loose. So someone let my dogs loose in my backyard, and then two of them got into a fight. I go and I break it up, and this is like a 12-week-old puppy, so I'm worried about her. So I run her in the house, I put her in the bathtub, I'm cleaning her off to make sure to look at her, and who's the first cop that shows up at my house? Cheryl Fry, the cop that I just filed a complaint on, is at my house right now. Isn't that a coincidence? And then there was another cop. So that's how fucking shit hit the fan. And they called, and listen, you got to understand how this works too, okay? When it comes to animal stuff, okay, regular cops, the everyday cops that patrol the streets, they don't know the animal laws very well. So what they do is they call like the Humane Society, and then there's this place called the Anna Shelter. They have cruelty officers who are basically licensed almost like police officers, and they know the dog laws, so they call them to investigate it because the police don't know the dog laws, so they call that person to investigate it. That person comes, they take a look at all my dogs, okay? They take all the ones that are outside for some reason. I'm not too sure why, but they left the ones that are inside the house. So if I was fighting dogs, why would you leave the dogs that are inside the house? You would take all the dogs, okay? So basically what it came down to was the cruelty person told the cops that, look, the only thing you guys can charge them with is having too many dogs, because I was over the legal limit for how many dogs you could have. And that's just an ordinance issue. That's the only thing he's guilty of. Okay? So that's what the cruelty person told them. So everybody leaves, whatever. They say, I got to change a couple things, and they're going to come back tomorrow and look at it. Well, in the meantime, Cheryl Fry goes and talks to the chief of police and works out this thing where, like, she wants to take over and she wants to charge me. Okay, because the cruelty officers aren't charging me. So the chick that I filed a complaint on wants to charge me with some shit that should be what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost like you shouldn't allow somebody to be the arresting officer if you filed a charge on, because it's like a conflict of interest. I would think that's a conflict of interest. I just filed a complaint on this chick, and you're letting her charge me. There was 1 million cops at my house. Any of them could have been the arresting officer and did the charges, but she did the charges, okay? And she did the charges because the cruelty dude told them that there was nothing that they could do, okay? So she fucking hosed me, okay? So then, it blows up in the news, you know what I mean? And I'm all over the world for fighting dogs, okay? And then I find out online that I got kicked off Team Jorge Gurgel. No one had a conversation with me like you would think. As close as John Stutzman and Jorge Gurgel and I were, you think they would at least call me and have a conversation with me. And I can understand if they wanted to kick me off because it's bad, you know what I mean? I wasn't paying them an association fee, you know what I mean? I wasn't doing none of that. I was just kind of just training under them. I did my own promotions. When I was a purple belt, I was promoting people to blue belt, and shit like that. You know what I mean? I just did whatever the fuck I wanted to do. And, but you think that at least they would have the decency to call me up and have a conversation with me and be like, hey, look, I know they're running a business. Look, we got to kick you off. And, when this shit's you know, if you're found not guilty, we'll let you back on, or, you know, when some time goes by, blah 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 blah, we'll let you back on. But no, they didn't do that. I just found out online. I called John and I told him that I thought that was fucked up, and he even admitted that was wrong. He might have apologized for it, I think. I don't really remember the exact specifics of the conversation. He might have apologized, but I know he said that it was wrong for him not to do that he shouldn't have did that. And you know what? People make mistakes. It's no big deal. I'm not going to hold it against you, whatever. But that's how I ended up getting kicked off Team Jorge Gurgel. And now I'm just roning. I'm just doing my own thing like I pretty much always did. But there was that.